Hello and welcome to the Critically Clueless. I'm a Monk, and today we are in Age of Wonders 4, and I'm coming at you now with a tips video. This is a beginner's guide tips video with some tips that can help you right from the beginning of your game, and I've also got a couple of advanced tips for you as well. And of course, if Age of Wonders content is the type of stuff that you want to see, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, and think about joining our Discord. We do have an active and growing Discord, and a link for that is down in the description. Tip number one is going to be exploration. When you very first start this game, you don't want to be sitting inside your city. You want to be actually using the troops that the game provides you, which should be one army and one scout. And you're going to want to explore as quick as possible, because some really important, easy resources that you can pick up from the very beginning of the game. Also, a side note would be good idea to actually train a second scout. Having two scouts at the beginning of the game is not a bad way to start your game. It means you're going to be able to explore twice as fast and pick up those rare loots. On top of that, hopefully you can encounter the free cities first as well and get on your way to turning them into your vassals. In keeping with the beginning of your game, your throne city, your first city, is where you want to invest the most time in. What I would recommend is focus on building up your population, therefore building buildings that actually give you extra food. When it comes to developing those provinces, thinking about having food or more of a focus on food isn't a bad idea, because the more food your city is generating, the faster that population will grow. And that leads into tip number three, because I wouldn't go over heavy on troops at the beginning of your game. Of course, this massively depends on the kind of culture that your empire does have. But typically, if you go too heavy on troops at the beginning of your game, that's going to really hamper your economy. And that's why tip number four is going to be about choosing your provinces carefully. As you level up your population, you're going to be able to expand your provinces over the map around your city. And not every province is equal. Depending on the map and the surroundings that you have, some of your provinces may have, for instance, gold veins in it, or maybe mana generators. And planning ahead, especially if you have a specific building or plan in mind. For instance, if you wanted the armory, you need to have at least two provinces with forestries in them in order to unlock this building. So having a little patience and actually understanding how you want to expand will help you in the late game from very, very early on. Tip number five would be a little reminder that your city can be taken extremely easy if you don't have troops around it. In fact, if you don't have troops inside your main city, it can actually just be straight walked in. So making sure your main army doesn't wander too far away is going to be extremely beneficial, especially if you have hostiles nearby. But tip number six would be a reminder that all troops do cost upkeep. And if you don't have that upkeep, you'll end up going into a minus. And if that happens, your troops can desert. Now, when they desert, they actually become hostile units to you. And that can pretty much end your game extremely early. So watch out for that. Tip number seven is actually one that the game doesn't necessarily explain to you, at least not in words or in the tutorial, but that is about separating armies. So at the beginning of the game, you start with a full stack army, but did you know that you can actually separate the units within that army? All you have to do is press down on the D-pad, select whichever troop that you want to separate, and then deselect them by pressing B or back and then moving them on the map. I can't tell you how many times I wanted to improve an army, as in the points that it's actually valued, but I couldn't figure out how to actually move the weaker units from it. Moving on to tip number 8. Not every battle has to be micromanaged. There is an auto attack feature within this game, but fair warning, if you do auto attack or auto battle, your troops will probably take unnecessary damage. However, in my experience, Age of Wonders 4 actually does a bit better job of it than a few other strategy games, and therefore it's not quite as mean. Tip number 9, you may not be aware, but this game not only has an overworld, but it also has an underworld. And there is a way for you to go underneath the main view. And underneath there are some pretty decent rewards. Not only are there rewards, but there's also free cities. And of course, the NPC factions can also build underground too. In fact, some cultures are actually better suited to build underground than they are above ground. So don't be afraid to explore underneath your city. There is actually a button for you to switch up and down from the two different worlds, and there are different passages in which you can move your troops that way as well. There is some seriously decent loot there. There are some different enemies there. And in some cases, some civilizations just absolutely thrive underground. Maybe the one you've created. Tip number 10 is all about those tomes. Now, tomes deserve their own video, and that video is definitely going to be on its way. But I would say to you is, at the beginning of your game, when you're very first starting, the different spells that you want to learn for your civilizations, pay special attention to finding spells that heal your army. In my experience, it is better to heal your army than having to replace it. Sometimes it costs far too much draft and far too much time spent in order to replace those units that have been lost, when if you had the correct spell, you could simply heal your troops. There's spells to heal your troops in combat, there's spells to heal your troops permanently, and there's also spells to help exploration. Wayfinder Enchantment is a great spell to learn because it actually boosts the range of your scouts. Early game, this is going to be key because scouting is so important. And the last tip I have for you is a little bit of an end game tip, because as you go through this game, you're going to be doing countless sieges. That is you taking cities of other people. Now, what I found is that sometimes I have engaged in a siege and I've realized that perhaps I don't have the greater numbers. My army just isn't quite strong enough, but yet I've already begun this siege. Now, when you begin a siege, you have a counter. You know how many moves it's going to take before you go to war or go head to head in this battle. However, if you think your days are numbered and you're not actually going to be able to win, you can call for reinforcements. Now, of course, moving troops from around the world is going to take time. But if the siege is ready to take battle, you don't actually have to continue it. Instead, you can press Y or triangle, depending on which console you're on, bring up the menu and manually end your turn, meaning you can rinse and repeat this until you've got all the troops you need to win the battle. But there we go, guys. Those are my 11 beginner guide tips for Age of Wonders 4. Hopefully, 1 or 2 of these you actually found useful. And don't forget, if you have your own tip that you want to share, comment down in the video. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button that we don't miss out on more videos just like this. But until next time, I've been a monk, we've been a Critically Clueless, and I will see you in the next video real soon. Until then, take it easy and happy gaming.